Hi, my name is Amanda Popila, and I'm a researcher for Human Capital with the Conference Board. It is my pleasure to introduce you to today's webcast, Getting Performance Management Right with Bullet Points, Not Books. On today's webcast, we'll explore the following issues. We'll talk about aligning performance management processes with the business mission, taking a fast and actionable look at individual performance, progress, and potential. We'll hear how one organization found that more frequent feedback works, and we'll talk about some of the challenges and lessons learned from them. And we'll talk about what's next in the performance management evolution. So before I introduce our speakers for today, a few housekeeping issues. First of all, we encourage you to actively engage with us today. So please ask questions in the chat box, provide comments. I'll be moderating, so as we go through, I will look for your questions and ask them as they come up. You can also download the presentation. That link is at the bottom of your screen. You can make the screen larger by clicking those 4 arrows at the upper right-hand corner. We do have a brief evaluation following today's show, so please take a moment to fill that out. It'll pop up on your screen as soon as the webcast ends. It takes about a minute. We do appreciate your feedback. This webcast will be made available on demand following the presentation today. That's at conferenceboard.org. And it should be posted within a day or two following the webcast. And finally, you can earn HRCI, SHRM, and CPE recertification credits if you're watching this broadcast live. To do so, please put your name, your email address, and the type of credit you need in that box at the bottom of your screen. You do need to remain on for the entire webcast. And if you're looking for CPE credits specifically, you'll see 3 pop-up boxes. Make sure that you click those boxes. So with that, I will introduce our first guest. Anna Burke leads the marketing organization for Highground, and her role is helping Highground customers share best practices and learnings and launching continuous performance management and recognition solutions. So Anna, will you introduce our other guests and tell us a little bit more about Highground?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, somebody just interrupted my meeting room. So thank you for having me today. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to introduce today's speakers. Hill & Knowlton Strategies is a global strategic communication consultancy, and I'm very pleased that they've been able to take the time and effort to put together this presentation for you. They have some great insights to share as it relates to employee engagement and performance management. And under their collective leadership, they've won various awards recognizing the firm as a positive place to work. So with that, I will introduce today's speakers. Rebecca Ballard is the head of communication and culture at Hill & Knowlton Strategies. She leads the function responsible for communication, marketing, employee engagement, and award-winning people and culture initiatives in the U.S. She is also the founder and executive director of the firm's women's network, HER, Helping Executives Rise. Jill Miller is the SVP and the U.S. Director of Human Resources for H&K. She oversees the firm's recruitment and retention staff across the U.S. And she also leads the H&K Distinction Committee, which is the U.S. arm of the firm's Diversity and Inclusion Initiative. Prior to her career in HR, Jill served in various finance and accounting capacities. And Laura, I might patch your last name, Laura Remetko, is the Director of Talent Acquisition for Hill & Knowlton Strategies region, and she oversees the firm's recruitment of top talent across the U.S. And she also leads the H&K U.S. training team and is a champion of H&K's Recognition and Rewards Initiative. Under Laura's leadership, they attract and hire diverse employees, which has grown significantly over the last few years. So thank you all and look forward to your program. But before we do that, if can flip to the next slide, I just want to give a quick overview of Highground really quickly. So Highground is an employee performance and engagement solution, basically facilitating continuous feedback. And it is a very mobile, social program, essentially working in a way to help improve the employee experience across the board. And we really also integrate with a variety of different applications that your employees are using on a day-to-day basis to make it really super seamless and easy to use. It will really help the organization with 3 primary points. Number 1, we help maximize the potential of your managers and your teams? How can we help you help your people improve on an everyday basis through more frequent agile goals, coaching conversations, and guided and peer feedback? Secondly, help you build a stronger culture. Doing so with bringing cultural values to life and helping you just frame up the purpose of your organization through social recognition and rewards. The third aspect is how can you generate the feedback and insights from your employee base. So get that sentiment of what's happening within your organization through pulse surveys and polls. And the value of bringing all of these things together in the same solution is the data. So you're being able to give insights to your leaders to make more informed talent decisions moving forward. So with this now, I think we'll be moving into a poll question. And so we'd like to ask the audience question of what challenges is your organization facing to engage and motivate your workforce to perform? So what challenge is your organization facing to engage and motivate your workforce to perform? A few different options here. Number one, complicated, infrequent, or inadequate performance management processes. Number two, lack of transparency throughout the organization. Number three, perception of limited career paths. And number four, accountability, lack of accountability across all levels of the organization. And I'm sure that, you know, many of you face a variety of these choices, but it looks as if at this point, perception of limited career paths taking the lead. Give it a couple more seconds here to let people answer. Yep. All right, yep. So it looks like things have evened out a little bit, but that perception of limited career paths is still in the lead. And then also accountability and complicated or infrequent performance processes. And the good thing is we're going to be addressing quite a bit of these topics today during the program. So with that, I would like to turn things over to Rebecca, who is going to kick things off for H&K.
Great, thanks, Amanda, and thanks, Anna, for the intro. On behalf of Hill & Knowlton Strategies, I'm really excited to be here with Laura and Jill to talk you guys through this journey that we've been on at H&K over a longer period of time, but more specifically for today's topic, really over the past year, in terms of evolving our performance management process and systems, and moving away from an annual review process to more continuous feedback. It's a process that we call Snapshot. And because we call it Snapshot, you can see here on the agenda that we've gone with some photograph-themed elements for our agenda. So let me talk you through that really quick so you know what we're going to be covering. So first, I'm going to be providing a frame, so giving you some context about our industry and about H&K, so you know kind of like the landscape that we're operating in, where we're coming from, what our talent profile is. Do you kind of understand what it is that we're bringing to the table as we're considering performance management and anything else related to our employees? And then a new focus. I'm going to talk you through a little bit about a business transformation and reorganization that we went through starting last summer that has really given us, kind of set us on this path for how we've changed our performance management process. This transformation as a company has been a huge part of that. And then I'm going to hand it over to Laura, and she's going to talk you through Snapshot, the actual process, the performance management system. She's going to walk you through kind of slide by slide, let you see what it is that our employees are looking at, what we designed with our partners at Highground, and what we're using today instead of our annual reviews. You're going to see our Snapshot, and she'll talk you through some of the communications and tools and resources that we have put behind this process. Then we'll take a look at the current lens, like where we are today. What are the challenges that we're dealing with now? What are the metrics that we've looked at for success that lets us know we're on the right path, and how it's working? And then we will, on the horizon, what's coming next for us as an organization as we continue to evolve this process and continue on this journey. And then we'll open it up for questions and discussion. And like Amanda had said, we really hope that you ask a lot of them because we're excited to talk through how this process has worked and what we've been working on, and help you maybe to make some sense of some things that you might be working on in your own organizations. So providing the frame. The industry and the company context that we're dealing with here. So professional services consulting is the industry that H&K falls into. So what we're dealing with is public relations. We're doing integrated communications, marketing, content, digital. We are doing all sorts of things across the whole marketing mix in a consulting framework, a consulting environment. So that means that we have some of our clients are ongoing long-term relationships that we have for long periods of time. Some of them are very short project-based work. Some of the crisis work that we do can be days or just weeks at a time. So when our people are working, we're rarely working on, like long builds like you see in the defense space, or long-term projects that are building over a period of years. Most of the work that we're doing is faster in shorter bursts and shorter time frames. So that is the industry that we're working in. And because of that, our greatest asset is our people. I know a lot of companies say that, a lot of industries say that. In ours, it feels particularly true because what we are selling at any given time is the time and the brain space of our people. Our greatest asset walks out the door every single day. So that is what we are dealing with. And so talent development is wildly important for us. And looking at the PR industry specifically, our talent profile, we're very young and we're very transient. And that's across the board. That's not H&K, that's the PR industry as a whole. Our employee profile is largely entry to mid-level. And the standard annual turnover in our industry is 25 to 30%. So when you're looking at reviews or any sort of development programs that might develop over a longer period of time, in a lot of cases, we don't have the benefit of that time to be able to make things happen because our people are, they're coming and going more frequently than in a lot of industries. And a lot of them are young. We have a lot of young folks. So you're kind of have the age and that speed with which people leave that we're dealing with every day as we're developing our people. And then the context of what we've been doing from a performance management standpoint. So throughout the past few years, we've tried performance management from a couple different frameworks or approaches. We partnered at one point with a small software developer to build what that performance management and review process looked like. It was a fairly lengthy process, pretty expensive. We didn't have a lot of flexibility to make changes in real time. And so that was kind of one phase in how we were handling performance management and what our people were using for that. Another iteration of our performance management was that we were using a model from our HRIS vendor. But it was pretty dated. It felt really heavy to our employees. It was difficult to navigate. There were issues just kind of with the functionality. So from a wholesale information management perspective, there were some benefits to that, but the experience wasn't really what we wanted our employees to be having. So we knew that we were going to continue to be on the search for some sort of a new process. And then we do a lot of getting a lot of employee feedback and getting a lot of employee surveys. So our company, we do a global employee engagement survey every year, and that feedback really drives and helps shape how we work on performance management, HR, talent development, training, all of those different things. We also do a lot of spot checks and pulse surveys with our employees to just hear how things are going on a more frequent basis. And what we kept hearing over and over again about the performance management process was that people, they were ready for a change. They wanted something new. Those two platforms that I had described before, they just really weren't fitting the bill. People wanted more there. And our people and you probably see this too as well, as younger generations are coming into the workforce, it seems like every day people are wanting more feedback more often. There's kind of just a lot of change going there from employee demand and employee interest. So all of these things were kind of swirling in the environment. And then we kind of had our tipping point moment. And we had a new focus as a U.S. organization. We went through starting last year, we embarked on a business transformation and transition reorganization in the U.S. organization. So this is just a little over a year ago that we started to do this. And we were making some really key changes to our business model. We started to really focus more on flexibility and velocity. So everything that we're doing in our business, we're asking ourselves and our company and our people and our processes to be faster and more nimble, to take risks quickly, to implement and iterate whatever it is that we're doing with speed. When we're coming up with products in the communication space, we're asking to launch and then fix as you go, fail fast, experiment, cut the red tape, speed things up. So in all things that we're doing, we're trying to focus on velocity and make things move faster. Another change that we made last summer was a move to a single P&L. So up until that point, we had been a geographically based organization. So our employees and our client teams across the U.S., they were working together, but when it came down to it, each market was a bit of an island to itself. It had its own geographic-based management structure. The people who worked there were pretty much based in a management team leadership structure that was based there in their geography. And through this transformation, we removed that geographic layer. So instead of having a management structure that was making all the management decisions, in the Chicago office, all of a sudden, those people who'd been doing those management responsibilities, that time and attention was refocused on our clients, and we started to put in place more U.S. level, U.S.-wide processes and systems that took care of that management. So those people in our offices, the silos were down between them, and they could spend more of their time working on our core business. Through having to change that office structure, we also then needed to change our reporting lines for our talent. Up until that point, employees worked for a senior person within their own geography, within their own physical office. And as we moved to this focus on clients rather than geography's structure, our employees all had the chance to pick whoever their manager was going to be. And the guidance that they were given is that we wanted them to pick their manager to be someone who was a client leader on one of their biggest accounts, someone who was in the best position to see their day-to-day work, who would be in the best position to comment on their on how they're doing and what their development needs are and all of those sorts of things. And so that that management structure and that reporting line changed. So now we have people, instead of their manager being down the hall, you have some of our folks who have their manager, across the country or even farther. And then the final core piece of that business transformation that we were doing was that we went to a flatter structure. We streamlined the number of titles we have. People now are spending longer times in roles, and instead of focusing so much on climbing a hierarchical ladder, we're really trying to focus more on performance and broadening people's experience base and letting them have access to different types of work and skills and development that they want to do that maybe doesn't fit into a straight hierarchical ladder, kind of broadening people's abilities and really focusing on their personal performance. So those are the changes that we were making in the business. And like I said, along with that, we just are having a newer generation, since we are so heavily young in terms of the age of our employee base. This newer generation, they're just asking for more feedback more often. We kept hearing that. So kind of the way those two things mashed up together in terms of the changes in the employee base and the changes in our business, it was the perfect time for us to come up with and roll out a different style of performance management for our people. And so what that has looked like is moving to bullets, not books. A criticism of the annual review process has always been that you're putting together huge amounts of narrative. It takes forever. It's a huge investment of time. We're really pushing our people to use bullets, like very, very succinct, very quick. We're limiting the number of participants and the amount of time that people spend on it. So we're having people invite fewer people into that performance process. We're really focusing on individual performance, progress, and potential, keeping it really succinct, those three different categories, so that rather than a huge ream of KSAs or huge lengthy narratives about something, we're keeping it just really focused on how are they doing, what kind of progress they need to make, and what's next for them, what's coming up. And we wanted to keep it quick, simple, and actionable. Again, we're asking people now to do this on a more frequent basis, quarterly rather than annually. So we're needing to keep it quick and fast and to prove to people that now that these conversations are taking place about their development, about promotions, about advancement, now that it's taken place at a U.S. all across the board level, we need to be showing people that that it is working, that things are coming out of these reviews. It's not something that you just do once a year and it sits on a shelf. And so that's kind of the context and the frame and the background for this new process that we've done. And I'll hand it over to Laura now to talk you through what our answer to these questions
Before we hand it over, we have one question. You said you limited the number of participants. How did you do that?
Yeah. So what we're doing, and Laura will get into this as she talks through the platform itself. But when I say we limited the participants in our annual review process, it was a 360. And so I'm wanting to say that you could invite maybe like 3 or 4 different leaders or managers to feed into your annual review. You could invite 3 to 5 peers to participate in your review, and then any number of direct reports could participate in your review. So for each person in the company, there was maybe 12 or 15 people who were having to respond and do something to provide that person's review. As we move to Snapshot, and Laura will walk you through this, we've limited it to 2. You can invite your manager, so the person you direct line into, and then you can pick up to 2 client leaders to feed into the process. So the maximum number of people who are looking at these quarterly snapshots to put them together, who are actually responsible for feeding into it, it's 3 people total, which just has really streamlined, again, as we're talking about speed and making things be quick. That's a decision that we made to help do that. And as we were becoming more performance focused and really were wanting to reward high performers, that feedback from those people who could see your work most directly, those are the people we really wanted to hear from the most. And we'll talk about some of the pros and cons of that once we get to the challenges and what's to come in the future section, because there are some elements of that we're talking about wanting to bring back into the process somehow. But Jill will get to that towards the end of the process, or the end of the presentation.
Thanks, Rebecca, for providing that great overview and context. I am going to go ahead and really focus on what our snapshot is. It is our quarterly performance tool, and we're going to go ahead and dive in deep and show you some screenshots so you can get a good look and some tips and tricks and best practices of what we've done and what we've introduced to help support our business transformation. So what is our quarterly snapshot? Our quarterly snapshot is meant to be fast and actionable. It's to look at an individual's performance and progress and potential. It is a quarterly check between our employees and his or her manager, and it takes place once a quarter for about 30 minutes. We do the snapshot through a tool that is supported by our partner Highground, And after the snapshot is completed, there's then a dedicated meeting that takes place between our employee and manager. Why do we do snapshots? We feel that with this snapshot approach, we can quickly calibrate our employees' personal performance, learning, and direction with input from other client leaders. All of our U.S. employees are eligible to participate in the snapshot, and recent hires, we ask them to be here at least for 1 quarter before we introduce them into our snapshot process, so we have some more data and insight on how they're performing before they go ahead and participate. So we're going to take a look at what makes up our snapshot and who's involved in our snapshot. As Rebecca mentioned, there are key players in this process. And there's 3 of them. The first one being the employee, aka the reviewee. There's also client leaders and also a manager. So let's take a look at each one a little bit more in depth. The employee and reviewee really goes ahead and drives this process for us. They kick it off and they start it by completing a self-evaluation. At the same time, they're asked to go ahead and provide up to 2 client leaders to provide feedback to them for their snapshot. So we're going to take a look now at what our client leader is. Our client leader is what you can also think of as an indirect manager. That's someone who works with the employee but is not their day-to-day primary manager. They have some insight into what that employee is doing. They cross over on some work and some projects, but they don't manage them day in and day out. And then the last key player in the process is our manager. Our manager is responsible for completing the snapshot review and then meeting with the employee to present it. The way we've designed our tool is that our manager not only has his or her own thoughts on that employee's performance so far, but they also will have access to the self-evaluation that the employee completed and also the feedback from the client leaders too. So let's take a look at what our snapshot content involves and how we've developed it and designed it. There's 3 main components to it. There's the highlight reel, the what next, and the what else sections. And it's as simple as that. It's just 3 sections that need to be completed. The highlight reel really focuses on the employee's biggest responsibilities, achievements, and accomplishments. And all 3 key players, the employee, client leader, and manager, complete this on the employee. They do the same for the what next section as well, which really focuses on areas or skills an employee wants to try out or develop before the next snapshot. And then our last section, which focuses on what else, is an opportunity for, again, these key players to highlight any training or office leadership activities that the employee may have participated in this last quarter. So as you can see, it's really simple, it's really focused, and really actionable. So we're going to go ahead and take a deeper dive into the process from the point of view of each of these key players. Our first key player is obviously looking at this from the employee lens. As I mentioned before, the employee is really the person that drives this process and kicks it off by completing a self-evaluation and by providing to their manager up to 2 client leaders they want to get feedback from on their snapshot. So in this scenario, we're going to take a look at 3 people, Larissa, Jenny, and Jill. In this scenario, Larissa is the employee. She's the one that this snapshot is about. Jenny is her manager, and then Jill is her client leader. And again, as a reminder, the client leader you can consider as an indirect manager. So this is what our self-evaluation looks like. When Larissa, the employee, logs in, this is what she's going to have to go ahead and complete. It's 3 sections. It's the highlight reel, the what next and what else that we went through. And as you can see, that it's really an opportunity for Larissa to go ahead and highlight her achievements and accomplishments under the highlight reel. for her to go ahead and list any areas or skills she wants to focus on in the what next section before the next review, and then in the what else section to highlight any trainings or office leadership activities she may have participated in. You can see the way it's designed. It's meant to be fast, it's meant to be straightforward, it's meant to be focused. So even the space where Larissa as the employee will complete her self-evaluation, it's limited. It's meant to be bullets. It's not meant to be a book or an essay that she writes about herself. Being in the communications field that we are, our employees can be very verbose, but we really want them to focus on their headlines. What have they done? What are they proud of? What do they want to be working on next? We're now going to take a look at this through the client leader lens, our second player in the snapshot process. So again, just a reminder, in this scenario, we're sticking with the same role of everyone. Jill is the client leader, Jenny is the manager, and Larissa is the employee. So you can see how the flow goes. Jill is providing feedback to Jenny, who is Larissa's manager, and then Jenny will incorporate that feedback from Jill as the client leader and incorporate it appropriately in Larissa's snapshot. So this is what the client leader feedback form looks like. Again, I'm repeating myself, but you'll kind of get the theme here of what we're doing, is that there's the three sections. There's the highlight reel, there's the what next, and the what else. So it really mirrors what the employee completed in their self-evaluation. So each employee can select up to 2 client leaders or indirect managers who have some oversight into what they do day to day, but aren't their primary managers. What differs in this feedback form versus what the self-evaluation is that there's a 4th section. That 4th section is the positioning statement. This is an opportunity for the client leaders to go ahead and select a summary statement of how Larissa's performance has been this last quarter. You'll be able to see, and I know it's difficult to see since it's tiny, but it focuses on anything from our ratings from this person is not a fit with H&K to this person is exceptional, top of the class, above the rest for their level for this firm. And we expect in what we provide as guidance to our staff, our managers, and client leaders is that the majority of our employees will, we expect them to be aligned to those middle statements, meaning the person is already a solid team member or they're an excellent team member just as they are and they should keep up the great work. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at Snapshot through the manager lens, the 3rd key player. Again, as a reminder, Jenny is our manager, Jill is the client leader, and Larissa is our employee. So what is happening in this scenario is Jenny reached out to Jill as another client leader or indirect manager to Larissa and asked for feedback on how Larissa did this past quarter. Jill provided that feedback to Jenny. Jenny, as the manager, will review through that information and incorporate it as appropriate into Larissa's final snapshot for the quarter. This is what the manager feedback looks like. I just want to remind everybody the first step that we talked about at the beginning is requesting feedback from the client leaders. And again, we've limited to 2 in our organization. You'll remember when Larissa, the employee, started her self-evaluation, she also is asked to suggest up to 2 client leaders to provide feedback, additional feedback on her performance this past quarter. So in this case, and in this scenario, you can see circled in the red, this is the feedback form. Jenny, the manager of Larissa, went ahead and filled this out, that she's asking feedback about Larissa, which is the first question in field. And then she's asking Jill, who is a client leader of Larissa, to provide feedback on her. And again, we allow our staff to request up to 2 folks to provide that feedback.
Laura, has there ever been a situation where somebody wanted to include more than 2?
Yes, absolutely. There are folks that want to include more than 2. Since we do this so often on a quarterly basis, we ask our staff to really focus on the people that they've worked most closely with this past quarter, and then they can get feedback from additional people in later quarters as well. So because this is continuous, there's that opportunity to do that. So you do not have to pick the same 2 people every single quarter. So within a year, you would have 8 different people that can contribute to your quarterly snapshot in the client leader role and function.
Got it.
Okay. So looking to the right hand of the screen, this shows what the manager goes ahead and completes. Again, it's the same sections at the type. You can see there's the highlight reel, the what next, the what else, and then the positioning statement, which was similar to what the client leader completed. And you can see where the manager can go ahead and enter in comments about Larissa's performance. So in this case, Jenny, who is Larissa's manager, is going to go in and take the feedback that she received from Jill, the other client leader. She's going to incorporate feedback of what Larissa submitted as her self-evaluation, and then Jenny's going to have her own thoughts on Larissa's performance. And she can go ahead and then enter in that commentary. Again, that commentary and those notes are meant to be bullets, not books. It's meant to be very focused, very concise, and also very actionable. The one thing I really wanted to highlight on the screen as well is to the right, you're going to see a feed of recognition badges. In conjunction with our performance tool that we've partnered with Highground, we also utilize their recognition tool as well. And our recognition tool, we developed a few years prior to moving to Snapshot, and it was really came out of the need of our employees wanting to be able to recognize their colleagues, not only within their own location, but across the U.S. as well. And in doing so, we developed several different types of badges for them to give to each other, peer-to-peer, manager to subordinate, subordinate to manager, and so forth. So if you are working with someone in another office, I happen to sit in Chicago, and I'm working with Jill in New York and Rebecca on a project, I can go ahead and give them a badge, recognizing them for the awesome work that we worked on a specific project. So this is something that is a really great way to promote recognition and engagement within our agency. I love the tie-in between the performance section and the recognition tool because it integrates with each other. So as the manager is completing the snapshot on Larissa, Jenny in this case will see all the badges or recognition badges that Larissa received during that quarter. So this quarter, she received a Day of Awesomeness badge and an MVP badge. And as a lot of you know, it's really hard for a manager to keep track of every single thing and every single accomplishment that an employee may do. So this is a fantastic way for that to be a reminder, not only to the manager to recognize that, but even to Larissa as the employee when she's completing her self-evaluation, her badges will pull in and she can go ahead and highlight those on the snapshot also.
Is the feedback process mandatory? Is this all associates?
Yes.
Yes. So yes, it is open to all levels employees except for our interns, which we have started to develop a different type of snapshot
and
for them.
are you getting good participation, or what do you do for those that don't participate?
We have good participation. Jill's actually going to talk about that towards the end, so I'm going to hold that question until then so she can address that, if that's okay. Okay. So to support our transformation and our new direction at H&K, we had to really ensure that we had this right. So Jill, Rebecca, and myself, we spent a lot of time investing in developing tools and resources to make sure that our employees, our managers, our client leaders were successful in transitioning from our old annual performance process to this quarterly snapshot process instead. So that included developing a really well thought out plan, communication plan, setting up a regular cadence in communication, having a really concrete and focused timeline of how snapshots get done, developing guides to help both employees and managers in completing snapshots, and then also providing them with a sample of what a great snapshot looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and drill down to give you some examples of what these look like. These are some of our best tips, tricks, and best practices. So the first tool is the sample communications. As you can see, we go ahead and communicate to our staff on a regular basis what is going on with Snapshot. Here's an example of two communications that outline when Snapshot's going to open and when it's going to end, and also includes a countdown of how many days to go until we are done with the current snapshot process that we're going through. What's great is that our communications are supported from the top. So our executive leadership, our people leaders of each office, and HR are all involved in it. And that's something that's really important to remember, is that we don't want to make this just an HR tool or something that we check the box off that HR is making us do. Instead, it is something that is really embraced and engaged within the organization because it is so focused. It is so easy to do, and it really is impactful to help those individuals focus on where they want to go in their career and what their next step is and what else they want to accomplish at H&K. Here's an example. It's actually a real-time example of our timeline. As I mentioned, we are currently going through a snapshot that we opened up on September 17th. And you could see that just about 30 days later, 32 days, I guess, technically, on October 19th, it closes. This timeline is shared with all of our employees. It also includes key dates and milestones of our recommendation of when certain parts of the snapshot should be completed, whether it's when the employee completes his or her self-evaluation, the client leaders provide their feedback, and then the managers write their reviews so that they can meet in person with their employees prior to the October 19th date. I also mentioned that we developed a lot of guides and additional resources for our employees and managers as we were shifting from an annual review cycle to this ongoing quarterly cycle instead. So here's an example, again, of some tips and best practices of what we created. We created guides, two different ones. One was an employee guide. And the focus you could see on that one is for an employee to figure out and know how to get the most from his or her review. As Rebecca said, we've got newer folks coming in all the time. We have younger folks coming in all the time. This could be their very first performance review that they've ever gone through. So we just want to make sure that they have useful tips to prep for their snapshot evaluation. We also then have another guide that's focused on the manager, and that manager to provide them with tips on how to give a really strong, effective, and impactful review. Again, we may have folks, since we do have a younger, newer group, that are turned from an emerging manager to the first time that they may be presenting a snapshot to an employee. So this is a great guide for them to help set that stage, set that 30-minute meeting, and what they need to do to make sure that they go ahead and deliver an effective review and collaborative review. And lastly, here is a look at what a sample snapshot looks like when all parties have done what they needed to do. When all three key players have provided feedback, there's the employee commentary, the manager commentary, the client leader commentary, that's all incorporated by the manager into a finished deliver product to the employee to have. You'll see that there's, again, those 3 sections, the highlight reel, the what next, the what else. It's simple, it's bulleted, it's straightforward, and it's actionable. And that's really kind of was our motto when we started this process, is to make sure that it's bullets, it's not books, and it's something that would be very actionable and impactful for our employees. So I'm going to go ahead and now turn it over to Jill, who I know is going to answer some of those burning questions you have now that we've rolled this out. What has happened next?
Thanks, Laura. So, hi everybody. So I'm going to just talk about some of the challenges that we faced, and I'm sure some of you have faced, especially based on the polling question. I saw a lot of familiar answers, let's say. So to begin with, like everyone else, we had a performance review fatigue. Obviously, every year when you tell people that performance reviews are rolling out, you get that, really? And we saw that people weren't getting them done. You'll see our statistics a little later on. People weren't getting them done. As we mentioned, we had somewhere between 10 or 12 people participate in one person's review. And to be honest, you could then, as a manager or even just as a peer, be asked to be filling out reviews on 20 different people plus your own employees' reviews. And even if we gave people the right to opt out, I think what happened was we saw a lot of people feeling that it was overwhelming. So they just didn't do anything almost, because it was just easier to ignore it than to try to figure out which ones to tackle. And that was, that was exhausting for us. They also, the KSAs, that we would ask for didn't always apply to the employee that they were being asked to fill them out on. Even if we had different reviews for a client-facing person, an administrative person, a leader, a team player, even if we thought we had actually prepared reviews that were for the right person, the KSAs didn't always fit. They struggled with how to answer them because it didn't apply, or they struggled with, I just answered that in the one before, it felt very repetitive. So to be honest, it was old, it was antiquated, and managers and employees alike just weren't happy, nor was HR or any of our senior leadership. So we asked what they wanted, and that's where we got to this point. Of course, when you're doing a new platform, you say, okay, it'll be great, but now we have to train people, and that's a challenge, because we first have to get people interested and believe in us that this is not going to be a time-consuming, exhaustive process and just another system that they don't want to use. The good news for us was that I think Rebecca had Laura, had mentioned it. We were already using Highground first for our rewards and recognition, which is actually a very positive platform for people. Our employees like the fact that we have these badges and we have rewards and recognition. So employees were comfortable first with the site, and at least it wasn't something, a new site that, oh God, I have to learn something new. Secondly, we did do an annual performance review with Highground for, I think it was only 1 year. And so while maybe that was still an exhausting review, it was still a site that they used for their reviews. So I think that helped us in the sense that you have a new process that we're going to work through, but not necessarily the new platform. So we spent a lot of time on putting together a training deck that we thought was going to be useful. We didn't want the training to take too long. We offered a ton of training at the beginning. Most of Laura's slides, which you saw, came from that training deck. So you can see that they weren't too difficult to look at, and you can see the system was easy. We are now in our 4th snapshot, quarterly snapshot. So we started this Q4 last year. And we've reduced how many training sessions we have to do, because now you either have a handful of employees who are new and have never seen it before, or maybe 1 or 2 who want a refresher, because it's just that easy. They don't need to sit through a training that often. But I would say that we got through the training part, and that's important. Other challenges we face, as I think everybody would face, is the primacy recency effect when you're doing a review. I think it's common ground for people to think of only the most recent work, as opposed to thinking of what happened 12 months ago, 11 months ago, 10 months ago. We can't even remember what happened that long ago. And also your initial thoughts on an employee. You've met them, this is what I think of them, therefore that's how I'm going to review them. So by doing something like Snapshot, which is quarterly, you really are only looking at the most recent work, the past 3 months. It's much easier to remember that. It's much easier to focus on that, and that's what we should be focused on. To talk about something that happened 9 months ago versus what happened a month ago, maybe, I think we'd all say is not as relevant. And so that has made a huge difference in what we do. And then, of course, I think as we all know, everybody's hesitant to give critical, what I'd call constructive feedback. Listen, I have employees who feel like if you're a great employee, I don't have to give you a review either. So it's both of those things, giving feedback to the good employee because, hey, they know they're good, or giving that constructive feedback, which again, it's months of things that have boiled up. And so now you're giving this feedback that could maybe not even be so relevant anymore. So by doing something that's quarterly, we're actually hopefully getting to the problem way before it gets out of hand. So it's not really a problem. It's just, hey, we've noticed something that's a roadblock to working towards something. So we're going to address it really quickly, and it doesn't get out of hand. So I think those are the things that we looked at and said, this is what we have to accomplish. This is what we have to fix. So next, we'll show you a little bit about why we think it works. So to begin with, and I know this was mentioned before, it's employee driven. Our employees were surveyed. They were asked what they want. They pretty clearly told us they are looking for more often feedback, more constructive feedback, more regular feedback, consistent feedback. So we've now put it in their hands. You've asked for this, you have it, now it's up for you guys to get it started. So nothing can happen without the employee beginning this. They first have to do their self-evaluation. It does not move to the manager until an employee's self-evaluation is done. They also have to give the manager their client leaders' names of who they want to review them. And to be honest, that aligns just with our business goals of the culture that we're trying to enforce. It's about the employees. It's up to them to get things done. I think they feel empowered by it too, that they control it, so that's been helpful. It's also what we advertised. We told our employees we're going to give you something fast and easy and simple, and we have. There's no more KSAs. You throw that out. We're going to ask you, give us 2, 3, 4 bullet points of the things you feel you've done well this quarter, and that goes for the manager, the employee, the client leader. It's also about, it's short. It doesn't take that long. If it's taking somebody more than a half an hour to write any one of these, then you're spending too much time trying to remember something that might not be that important. We also did something that was important to us, that it's positive. There's nothing about what didn't you do well, what should you have focused on. It's really about what are the highlights. That word is a positive, has a positive connotation. It doesn't scare everybody when you're asking them, give us the highlights. Then we're also saying to them, what do you want to work on next? So again, we're taking the positive. What is important to you? And then the what else is really just throw anything else in. Throw in some training you've done, some leadership things you've done in the office, whatever it might be. But everybody's coming from a place of positive as opposed to, what didn't go well for you. It's actionable. The employee, the manager, they are empowered. They feel that they get to have an influence on the direction of maybe work assignments that are going to be upcoming. Our training and development, what we want to focus on, what as a company, I do as the head of HR, I do look at the summary of the reviews, and we look to see what are people saying, what kind of training do they want, so that we can also have our training leaders have a thought as to, well, what's important, what do the employees want to hear about. It's nimble, it's flexible, it's, people asked, can you have 2 leaders? Yeah, you have 2 leaders, the next time you have 2 more. It's easy to move around. And we were able, as a company also, we can make some quick changes if we need to the system, which was important to us too, because in our past systems, we couldn't make any changes as we learned and we went. We felt that it's collaborative. Everybody gets to have a part in this. What was important when we created it, it was created by HR, it was created by talent, it was created by leaders, our culture team, our IT team. Everybody had a say, so we felt we were answering what everybody's needs were and getting the results that we wanted. It's transparent. We let people know what's going on. From the beginning, they saw how this was going to be. They saw that there was a positioning statement. We didn't hide that. And they know that this plays a part. I know somebody asked the question. It does play a part in their annual increases or promotions. It's not the only piece, as a performance review is only one piece. We look at leadership in the office. We look at new business pitches. We look at our utilization, since we are a billable type of business. But it does play a part, and they know that. So they know it's important to get it done if they want us to do something, for them. So next, I'll show you a little bit about our metrics and where we were. Our annual review over the past 3 annual reviews, we had about a 70% completion rate. And I will tell you, to get to that 70% completion rate took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears of us reminding employees these reviews were open. Literally, person by person, talking to managers, you need to get this done, you need to get this done. So administratively, it was a ton of work on HR and the leadership in the offices to get this done. But it really was pulling teeth to get it done. Now we have an 83% completion rate, and I will be honest, probably our rate is slightly lower because our last quarter was done in the summer. I believe we did this in July, and we might need to rethink how we get that done, but between vacations, managers' vacations, employees' vacations, some people, they were out the whole time because 4 weeks can go very quickly, and we had a long week at July 4th, so we would actually be higher if it probably wasn't for that quarter. We've just rolled out our next quarter. It started last week, and I've already seen a great amount of participation from the self-evaluation. So just in the general sense, we have completely increased our response rate, which is important. Time to complete. We would literally have a quarter planned for the annual reviews, which is too long and too much. We are now down to every quarter we do this once a month. The 4 months, even still, we still didn't get more completion. And as I mentioned, administratively, for the HR team, for leaders, it was 4 times as much work to get less completed. So it's just been a success for sure. I know I saw a question earlier asked, do we police this? We do. And if somebody doesn't get it done, I hate to say this, but I am the person watching it, and I will certainly mention when somebody says this person should be promoted or this person should get an increase, I will certainly mention that they didn't take the time to do their own self-evaluation. Why should we do something for them? We need to have that conversation with them that this is important. It's for them to take the time to speak out loud about what they've done. At the same point, it's also for the managers. If a manager is not getting the reviews done, they will hear from me because that is their job. And if they don't want to be a manager, then we can talk about that as well. But it's important to get, obviously, the commitment from everybody. And I'm sorry I'm rushing, I know we're running out of time. So I just wanted to get to a little bit of what we've heard from some of our leaders. The reviews are in, you can see that. You've made Snapshot both simple and smart, and in doing so, you've made it better. It's a system that zeroes in on the core issues, which is so much smarter. And then with Snapshot, we give and receive the upshot. In culinary terms, think of it as focusing on the made dish, not the side dish, which of course we all like the side dishes, but this is what our employees are saying. They do appreciate it, they know it's quick and easy, and that's important to us. And then just the last thing, and I will get this done in a minute or two, what was important, here's kind of our review, how we would fill out for Snapshot. So important to have the leadership support. If you don't have that, that's going to be, a tough sell to everybody else. Definitely having a communication plan. Rebecca and her team worked so much with me after the first quarter to get something done that I now just sit back and it's kind of automatic. We have all these emails that go out that are useful. We look at them, make sure if we have to tweak them in another quarter, we will. But when you have that going administratively, it makes it so much easier. And I have to say, we beta tested everything over and over and over and over again. So before you launch this, you test in a demo site, you test in a live site, you look at the printouts, you look at every aspect, that every piece is looking the same and is showing what it's supposed to be. I cannot say that enough. And then for us, what's on the horizon and what's next is, we've talked about making it a 360. We do realize, though, if we do that, that might add to the time it takes to complete. So maybe that becomes part of only our annual review. We beef it up just once a year at the end of the year for an annual review where a few more people have a little bit of feedback to give you. And potentially we add goal setting in so that we look at what people talked about as what next, and maybe we make that a little more formal of a goal setting. And then, to be honest, we've talked about that this should go global. We are a global company. Most of our other regions don't even have their own system, so they could not only use ours, but then we can also help each other, because I'd be able to comment on a global employee that I work with and give them a review, or vice versa. So that's kind of where we are with what's next. So I know time is running out, so I'm going to finish and see if there's any last questions.
Absolutely, thank you. Can you talk a little bit in the last minute about, do you use this for either for bonuses or performance, or for action planning, on the other end?
We do. Action planning along the way, whether it's somebody who needs some help or needs to be moved off a team, whether it's somebody who we need to be looking at for promotion or we worry about them leaving. For bonus and performance, it's a part of it. When we do a quarterly bonus or a semi-annual bonus, we look to see, well, how did they do on their reviews, what was said, and also at pay time and raise time, it's also that as well as some other factors. It's always a piece of, it's not the only thing.
Yep. So there's no formal ratings.
No. I mean, the positioning statement's the most formal that we have.
Yep. Okay, with that, we are out of time. So I think you will have these slides. I think we skipped a couple at the end. But thank you to all of our panelists for being with us today. Thanks to the audience. There were a lot of great questions that came in. And as a reminder, there is an evaluation. It'll come up in just a minute. Please stay on for that. You can see here some of our upcoming conferences that are related to this topic. I'll be at the Engagement and Experience Summit in a couple of weeks, so it's a great agenda. Take a look at that. And then some related resources are here. We hope you'll join us at an upcoming webcast. Thanks again for your participation. I'm Amanda Popila, and this has been a Conference Board webcast. We'll see you next time.